If there's a vacant seat next to you, please raise your hand. Encourage those standing to take a seat. Are there any alcoholics present? This is a non-smoking meeting, including e-cigarettes and vapes. Smoking is not allowed in Manhattan Beach. We remind everyone that we are guests at this location and are lucky to be here. Please respect the no smoking rule. If you have not already done so, please turn off your cell phones and electronic devices now. Restrooms are located to my right around the building and up the ramp. The women's is a little further up the ramp from the men's. Please keep the noise down and respect for the neighbors. We record our speakers. If you would like a recording of tonight's speaker or any past speakers, please see Chris at the desk to my right. If you have a court card that requires a signature, please place it in the basket when we do the seventh tradition. You can pick it up after the meeting. And then the General Service Office has made, first paragraph, any person seeking help with a drinking problem is welcome at this group. No AA entity determines an individual's membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is this group's conscience that if any person endangers another individual or disrupts the group's efforts to carry AA's message, the group may ask that that person leave the meeting. Let's see. Then we have Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Are there any alcoholics here with less than 30 days of sobriety? We ask so that we may get to know you better in the break. If so, please stand, tell us your name, the nature of your disease, and where you're from. And there was no one. So will the Al-Anons with us tonight please raise their hand? Yay! Yay! Welcome. Do we have any visitors who have not previously identified from outside the greater Los Angeles area? If so, please stand and introduce yourself. Richard. Welcome. At this meeting, we read a portion of Chapter 5 from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Tonight, I've asked Lance to read this for us.
Chapter 5, How It Works.
What's your name?
Lance Alcoholic. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we were willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he ever sought.
Almost. Sorry. Okay. Our 7th tradition states that we are self-supporting through our own contributions. This allows us to pay our meeting rent. Other expenses and contributions to Central Service Office and New York. We encourage regular members of this group to donate generously. The steps are to the individual what the traditions are to the group. Tonight, we have asked Ethan to read the 12 traditions for us.
Ethan, alcoholic. 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Okay, the format of this meeting is one 10-minute speaker, a coffee break, and a main speaker. Tonight, our first speaker is Chelsea.
Good evening. My name is Chelsea, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Chelsea.
I want to thank the group for having us. Excited to be here. Welcome if you are relatively new. I know nobody raised their hand as a newcomer, but if you are relatively new, I welcome you as well. And I hope you found here what I found here, which is an amazing gift. This program is a gift. My sobriety date is April 29th, 2005. I have a home group in Rancho Santa Margarita, and my sponsor sits right over there. She knows she's my sponsor too, because I call her a lot, and we meet on a weekly basis, and she knows everything about me. Very important to have transparency with your sponsor. I was taught to share in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. So I will start at the beginning. I was born to loving parents. My dad was an alcoholic, though, and also bipolar. And when I was 3, he committed suicide. And my mom raised me and my sister. She never remarried, and we had a very loving home. But it left kind of an uncertainty about what alcoholism does to people and about men in general. So I took my first drink when I was 11, and it was not super exciting because I got caught, and that's what happens when you're 11, I guess. And so I do know that when I started drinking seriously when I was 16 years old, I loved the effect produced by alcohol. I tried to do it every time I could, get my hands on it. I graduated high school when I was 16, so I went into the workforce and did the part-time gig, tried to go to college, didn't really manage that very well because I was off and running into my disease. And at 18 years old, my mom asked me to move out. She said, "I'm tired of you raving and spending all night out doing things," and she just didn't want that in her home. So I couch surfed through the San Fernando Valley for about a year. And then at 19 years old, I was arrested. So I had a lot of paraphernalia in my car and was given a felony and was put on formal probation. That's when I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 19 years old, and I had no interest in getting sober, nor did I have any interest in what you had or anything like that. I was just getting going. And so I could not pass probation. I kept failing my tests, and so I did go back to jail and spent a little bit of time in there in Ventura County. When I got out, I was 20, and I spent the next couple of years doing a little more couch surfing when I was lucky enough to have a couch to be on. There were times that I lived in my car. There were times that I would be at Salvation Army's front door. There were lots of different scenarios, and I don't have time to go into all of them, but it was a very scary time. There was a period where I was held hostage at gunpoint in my car by my boyfriend because he did not want me to leave. And so when I did finally get away, you would think that something like that would be an eye-opener, and it wasn't. I wasn't quite done. So at 22 years old, I was out drinking, and I'm skipping ahead because there's a lot in there, but I want to get to the good stuff. So at 22 years old, I had been in and out of AA, never done the steps, never worked the program, never had a sponsor. I had gone to rehabs, I had done all the things, but I hadn't done this thing, right? And this is where the magic happens. So at 22 years old, I was tired, I was beat down, and I had gone out one more night on April 28th and, did what we do, and I woke up the next morning and I had what I consider to be my spiritual awakening, and I was tired and I was done, and I was willing to try something different. I had been going to AA meetings and taking dirty chips, and so I went to my morning meeting. It was a 6:30 a.m. meeting in a town called Redlands, and I raised my hand and I said, "I need help." I think I had like 2 days sober, and I was like, "I'm done. I can't keep living like this." And the one thing that I will tell you that I learned was that I craved the life that seemed more normal than the one that I was living. We talk about in our book, the alcoholic life appears to be the only normal one. Well, I did not want that life. I wanted what you had. I watched people in these meetings go to work and then come to a meeting after work and then go home and probably have dinner with their spouse and put their kids to bed and then get up and do it all over again the next day. And I wanted that so bad. I just wanted peace. So I was willing. My willingness was born. Thank you. So at 22 years old, I was a hot mess. Not a vision for you, gotta say. thought I knew everything, just no etiquette, no good dress attire, nothing. And the people in Alcoholics Anonymous welcomed me, and they loved me, and they said, keep coming back. So I found a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and at the 4th step, I stopped. I hear laughter. Sounds like I'm not the only one who's been through that. And I stopped until I had over a year of sobriety, and that was a very painful time. I talk about that every time I get a chance, because if you are sitting on a 4th step, I highly recommend don't do what I did, because I nearly drank. And you would definitely have a different speaker, a 10-minute speaker tonight. So I was chasing a fix in the form of tall, dark, and handsome. Let's just put it that way. And he drank, and I almost drank, and it scared me. And so I got busy. It scared me enough to get busy. So I finished my 4th step, and I started getting busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. I stopped coming late and leaving early. I started socializing and fellowshipping within that group in Redlands. And my life started to change, right? I started to do the amends steps. And things started to change, and people noticed. I was working a job that had previously fired me and brought me back after I got sober. And I started to get promotions, and I started, things were evolving as I stayed sober, and the promises do come true. At 5 years of sobriety, I made amends to my sister, and everything just blew wide open. I was so moved by the experience of making amends to someone who's never, ever going to change their ways. It was not about her anymore. It was about me changing my behavior. I moved out to Orange County at about 8 years of sobriety. I met my husband, and we moved out to Costa Mesa. And it was like starting all over. I had 8 years of sobriety, and I felt like a newcomer because I didn't know anybody. And everybody was blonde and beautiful and thin, and I'm like, I don't belong here. That's how it felt. But I raised my hand in a women's meeting, and I said, hi, I just moved here, and I need friends. I need friends. And it worked. And a fellowship blossomed. Got married, had a baby in 2016, and bought our first home in 2020, right before everything went crazy. And then about 6 weeks after buying our home, I got the news that I had pancreatic cancer. And I was 37 years old, I was 15 years sober, and I had no idea what was going on. I was talking to Dawn about it in the car, and it was like, I felt like a shell, just like going from place to appointment to chemo to wherever they told me to go. That's where I went, because I had no idea what was going on. I will tell you that I was not spiritually fit prior to getting the diagnosis, and it gave me the opportunity to get right with my higher power, right? Because when you were told you have 2 years to live, what else are you going to do? Thankfully, today I'm cancer-free. Thank you. God is good, right? And AA showed up for me during that time. I never drove myself to a single chemo appointment. I had visitors in the hospital when I had my surgery. I mean, God is good. God is good, and AA shows up for us when we need him the most. Today, my life is pretty big and pretty beautiful, and it's a result of working in the 12 steps and to practice these principles in all of my affairs. I'm not perfect, but I got to tell you, I have an inner peace today, knowing that I am way overpaid. I am here on borrowed time, and I'm truly blessed just to be standing here with all of you. And so when I'm asked to do something, when Dawn gives me the opportunity to get in the car, I get in the car. I have commitments at my meetings, and in fact, my favorite commitment at my meetings is to do the commitments that other people don't show up for, because I just want to make it happen. That's my favorite part, is just making 12-step work possible. And Alcoholics Anonymous has changed my life. If you hear nothing else today from me, I just want you to know that I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It has saved my life multiple times, and I hope you find here what I found here, which is another amazing life that I didn't even know I deserved. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Chelsea. We have literature, pamphlets, big books, grapevines, and flyers for upcoming events at the literature table. If you need a big book, we suggest that you do not leave here without one. Please see one of us for all your literature needs. We do not celebrate birthdays at this meeting. However, we do honor them by having those observing their AA anniversary stand, declaring audibly their name, disease, and the numbers of years sober. Glinda. Jeff.
Danny, alcoholic, 6 years.
Dang.
Dave, alcoholic, 9 years.
Happy birthday, everyone. It is suggested that members celebrating their AA anniversaries do so by donating a gratitude gift. Some members donate $1 per year of sobriety. Half goes directly to General Service Office in New York, and half goes to our central office. We will now have a 10-minute break. Please return to your seats quickly and quietly when you hear the bell ring to allow our main speaker the time and respect she deserves. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you for taking your seats quickly and quietly. And now, please join me in welcoming our main speaker, Don.
Good evening, my name is Dawn, I'm an alcoholic. Who's grateful to be alive, sober, and free on a Saturday night? All right, come on, you guys got a little bit more life. You want to be alive, you got to be awake, and it is the New Year's weekend, right? Who's grateful to be alive, sober, and free on a Saturday? I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys made it. You made it through the holidays and New Year's and all of that. And I want to thank the Sanctuary group for asking me to come out. I want to thank for the invitation from Alan. Where's Alan? Right here. And the follow-up with Merrill. And then, again, the telephone calls and to get us here. And I want to thank Chelsea for rolling out here with me and doing a fabulous 10-minute, don't you think? Oh, my God. And when we talk about, I remember when she got that call about her diagnosis, and I was caregiving at the time, and I was with this 98-year-old woman. And I'm thinking, she's 98, and I got a 37-year-old woman calling me and telling us she's got 2 years to live. And I was crushed and I was devastated, but I knew I had a faith and a power greater than myself, and to watch her dive into this deep connection with her higher power. And we were talking about, on the way here, getting all of her affairs in order and da-da-da, and I said, did you ever feel like you were going to die? And she said, yeah. And yet she knew that everything was taken care of, and then she got to that peace. That peace she found with this power, this higher power, that peace she found that if she died, she would be okay. And that was it's a very monumental experience that we had together. And I remember when she moved to Orange County, and she asked me to be her sponsor, and I was delighted because she actually was ready to self-combust a little bit, but because she didn't, it's hard to move in sobriety. Hard to move and hard to plug in if you haven't done that. I actually moved from where I got sober in Seal Beach area, and then I moved to South Orange County, and for 1 year I did all of my meetings back up in Seal Beach because I would not change. And then that got a little bit cumbersome because I'd be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning and get off about 2:30, and meetings don't start until later, and I'd sleep in my car. Then I joined a softball team because I needed something to do between the time. But we find we're resourceful. If you don't think we're resourceful, man. But I want to thank the Sanctuary group for asking us to come out. And we had a good time. We actually went out to Ragin' Cajun. No plug there, but they were fantastic. Just a little side note, if you like etouffee, they got the best on the planet. I want to welcome anybody who's new to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't see any or didn't hear anybody identify as new. So welcome. If you didn't identify, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're, let's see, is anybody coming back to AA? Like left AA and said AA doesn't work? Anybody? Nobody? Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Welcome home. Welcome home. Because if you're out there trying to control and enjoy your drinking and you're not enjoying it anymore, welcome home. And if your self-knowledge and willpower have failed you again and you have succumbed to the desire to drink again, welcome home. And if you're rolling around in those bedevilments sober, welcome home. But if you are desperate and you are drinking against your will and you are tired, welcome to a way of living that works. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Our book says it works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. You know, I also read in our meetings, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Rarely and thoroughly. Rarely and thoroughly. You know, I came here powerless, and that means without power. Lack of power is my dilemma. I had to find a power in which to live. And there is no human power that could relieve me of my alcoholism, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. And I mean, it says find him now. I mean, there in the 12 and 12, there's italics, now. Because there's a sense of urgency here. There's a sense of urgency. We're dying out there. You know, all we ask that you do is you come in here and you, you know, and you find someone, you know, you find someone who's, you know, tapped into a power. And now you can borrow the power of the home group. You can borrow the power of your sponsor. But really, this book is information on how to gain access to a power. And it's up to me and my willingness to put it into application, to bring about the transformation, and then be that demonstration. My sobriety date is April 16th of 1994. I have a sponsor, and I also have a home group. And now that home group is the women's meeting at the Canyon Club in Laguna Beach on a Thursday night at 6 p.m. Now, we don't have a meeting name because we didn't think that the Orange County Central Office would print it. But we do have a meeting name. It's called the Sluts. And it's an acronym for Sober Ladies Utilizing the Steps. Right? And we love our meeting name. So ladies, if you guys ever find yourself in Laguna Beach on a Thursday night at 6 p.m., come on by and you can be a slut too. We invite you, come on. You know, my friend Mary says, I came in as a slut and I became a slut. And I'm like, me too. And my sponsor said that me too are the kindest words in Alcoholics Anonymous, me too. Did she think like I thought? Did she do what I did? Did she feel like I felt? Did she drink like I drank? Me too. Me too. So we invite you to come on down. I truly believe that every sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a demonstration of God's power to change a human being. Now, how do we change? How do we change? Well, we use the essentials of recovery that's found in this big book. Appendix 2 is spiritual experience. The essentials of recovery, that's how. The HOW. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. But I believe that willingness is the key that it talks about in the third step of the 12 and 12. Because if I'm not willing to be honest, I'm not going to be honest. And if I'm not willing to be open-minded, I'm not going to be open-minded. And if I'm not willing to be willing, nothing is going to change for me. And nothing did change for me in my first year of sobriety. But I want to tell you how I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But before I do that, I want to tell you a few things about me. When I was 12 years old, I had an epiphany on my parents' front porch. 12 years old, I had this epiphany. I had this deep in my gut, behind my belly button, knowing 3 things about my life. Later on, I would work with a sponsor, and she would tell me that that deep in my gut, behind my belly button, knowing is an intuition. And ultimately, an intuition is a connection to a God. I don't know that yet. I'm 12. But I knew these 3 things. I knew that I wasn't going to have any kids. I knew that my 30s were going to be great. And I knew that I was going to travel the world in a business suit, carry a briefcase. I was going to be much like Bill. I was going to be the head of a vast empire. I was going to manage with the utmost assurance. And I was going to prove to the world I was important. And I knew those 3 things at 12. And I went, huh. And I went on my merry way. I believe that we are all born with this divine spark within us. And it's whether we fuel it or we smother it. And each and every time I take a drink, I dim the light of the Spirit within me. But in the darkest of dark, there's always a pinpoint of light. And there is a power that is accessible, and we can never be separated from it. But it got really, really dark out there for me. And so the big book talks about the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, not in his body. So let me tell you what I was thinking about between the ages of 12 and 15 when I took that first drink. Because remember, it gets really dark. But between the ages of 12 and 15, I come up in high school, and when I'm coming up in high school, there's all those extracurricular, things like, the stoners, the rah-rah girls, the drill team, the band, and all that extracurricular stuff. And I never felt like I fit in. I felt apart from. Even the 12 and 12 talks about anxious apartness. And I'm not, I don't fit in. Like, I'm not pretty enough to be in your social group. I'm not musically talented enough to be in the band. I'm not coordinated enough to be in the drill team, and I'm not enough. And I have no idea where that measuring stick came from, and I'm not enough. I rode and showed horses on the weekend. I did really, really well. I won national titles, but there is not an equestrian group on campus that I could fit into. Not even a 4-H club. Nothing. But I can tell you where I was and who I was with and what I drank. I was at the El Monte horse auction. I was 15, I was with a group of older friends, and I drank Southern Comfort right out of a bag. Right? Let me tell you what Southern Comfort did. Southern Comfort comforted. And it hit the pit of my stomach, and it was like, yes! And I loved the effect produced by alcohol that night. Can I get that water? Thank you, sweetheart. Appreciate it. Southern Comfort doesn't satisfy like this one does. Southern Comfort, that night, it stopped the chattering in my mind. It brought peace to my mind. It stopped everything. And I stopped comparing my insides to your outsides. And it just quieted everything. And I will tell you that the very best explanation I ever heard for me, and I think many of us, that I took that drink and I could exhale for the very first time. And I always felt like I was running at a level of less than. And man, I put alcohol into this, this alcoholic body, and I come up to the playing field. And I have flirtatious, fun, life of the party, and I love the effect produced by alcohol. And when I get into Alcoholics Anonymous and I read our literature and I get into the doctor's opinion, it talks about we are restless, irritable, and discontent unless I can again experience that sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. I am restless, irritable, discontent, unless I can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. That sentence tells me that's how I'm living sober. And I need to take a drink to quiet the restlessness, the irritability, and the discontentedness, until I can again experience a sense of ease and comfort. Because that's how I'm living sober. And then I take a drink and everything stops. And I love the effect. I love the effect so much I needed to do this again immediately, so the very first lie I told was to the California DMV. I took my girlfriend's baptism certificate, I took it to the DMV counter, told them I was new to town, and I needed an ID to cash checks. Signed her name, her birthday, let them take my picture, mail it to my address. It is half legit. And so I start lying to my parents. And I start telling them I'm going to the high school dances, football games, and everything extracurricular to do with school. You guys all know I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have never been to any one of those events. I was usually at the Mississippi Moonshine Club in Downey, and I am not there to party, have fun, or pick up. I am there to seek the relief that alcohol provided. Just give me a drink, put me in the corner, prop me up. I am good. I am there to seek the relief. I love the effect produced by alcohol. Nothing else can ever satisfy. I love the effect. You know, our book talks about, in the doctor's opinion, it says we're able, intelligent, or it says we forgot the strong warnings and prejudices of our people. And I had strong warnings early on. I was blacking out early on. I had unexplained door dings in the family car. And I'd come home, and my parents would say, well, how'd that that door ding? And I'd tell them, I think it's the grocery cart at the grocery store. And truly, I think that they were the guardrails on the freeway. And they were, there was one time, I had 1 foot in the window and 1 foot out of the window, and Dad said, hey, are you coming or going? And it's 3 a.m. and 17 years old. There's no right answer to that one. And, and there was a time that I was drinking in El Monte on a Saturday night, and it came to in my house on a Sunday morning, and I don't know what had happened, but I came to, and I woke up, and I was reading the paper, and there was a blurb in there that there was a fatal hit and run in El Monte. And I run out to check my car to see if there was any evidence of a crime that I might have committed. And I'm looking for blood and hair and dents and anything that might have convicted me of this crime. And it wasn't me. And I'm like, whoo! And I went on my merry way. And, our Our book also talks about, so I think I'm having a lot of fun in high school, right? I'm nothing's happening except I've got these strong mornings and going on. And our book talks about we're able, intelligent, friendly people. That's in the doctor's opinion as well. We're able, intelligent, friendly people. And in high school, I did really, really well academically. As a matter of fact, I could connect with the books, right? I could do really well with the books and connect with the books, but I can't connect with you. I need a drink to connect with you. But I did really well. I actually was the third valedictorian of my graduating class. So did really well, able, intelligent. And then the friendly part. Well, when I'm in high school, I actually was voted the senior class clown, along with being the valedictorian. But I worked with a sponsor later on, and she would tell me that being voted the senior class clown is a level of self-centeredness. Because I need the attention on me. Doesn't matter how I'm getting it, I just need the attention on me. And so also, during high school, I never had a date. I never went to the prom. I never had a boyfriend. I never had any of those experiences. This becomes very important because at 20 years old, I met a guy in January, and I married him in August. And if you think about doing that now, I hope you have a sponsor. But I didn't have a sponsor at the time. I was still drinking and doing stuff on the weekends. Now, mind you, I've got my first corporate career job at 20 years old. I've got my first corporate career job, and I'm married. And I don't know how to do either. I'm doing the best I can. First corporate career job, and I'm working, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And now I'm trying to be this doting housewife, and I'm doing meal prep long before it's famous. I'm like packing lunches and freezing dinners and making, doing all that stuff. Saturday mornings at 6 a.m. I'm going to the grocery store. I load up the groceries. I come home and I unload the groceries. Then I load up the car and I go to the laundromat. Right? She's got, I know. And so I do all the laundry. I load up the car, and I come home and I'm unloading the laundry, and he's still doing his dry goods on the couch. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still doing lots of stuff on the weekend, but I am trying to be this doting housewife. As a matter of fact, I am trying to mimic my parents' relationship. As of May 2nd of this year, they've been married 60 years. And I'm trying to do the best I can, and I'm trying to run the show, manage life, doing everything, going to work, and just taking care of everything. And at 5 months into that marriage, that man came home with hickeys on his neck and chest and told me they were bruises from work. And out popped the measuring stick. And I'm not enough. I'm not pretty enough to be your wife. I'm not good enough to be your wife. I'm not talented enough to be your wife. You're seeking outside relations. And I don't know what to do. And so I stayed. And I told no one. And for 7 more months, every time that man walked out the front door, I became an ugly piece of work. And I would verbally assault him. Eventually, I'm physically assaulting him. And ultimately, the police are escorting me out of my own home. And it's like, don't you know what he did to me? Don't you know what he did to me? And I've got victim and self-pity oozing out of my pores. And on our 1-year anniversary, I didn't know what to get him for a gift, so I asked him for a divorce, and he obliged. And we split, and we went our separate ways. 6 months, and so I move into my parents' house, and for 6 months, I cry myself to sleep. Poor, poor, poor me. Poor, poor, pitiful me. One morning I woke up and I had those big puffy cry eyes, and I looked in the mirror and I said, I am sick and tired of feeling this way. Pour me a drink. I'm going to kick ass all over this town. And that's exactly what I proceeded to do. I moved out and moved into a roommate situation. Game on. I am drinking on Wednesday to prepare for Friday's happy hour. Saturdays I'm drinking to oblivion. Sundays I am trying to taper off to get to work by Monday. Has anybody ever noticed that Jim in the big book shows up on a Tuesday? Right? I got a head nod. He shows up on a Tuesday. Me too. I can't make it to work on a Monday. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to taper off. I just overshoot the mark all the time. Think Jim did too. And so what happens is, my solution to that, according to my sponsor later on, what happens is I just start dating the bosses. I just started dating the bosses. My sponsor said, you're just insuring your drinking. Later on, right? But here's what's happening. See, they have no idea my capacity for drink. And I'd call in sick, and he'd send flowers. Then I'd come in late, and I'd be like, I'm dating the boss. And I got a good gig going on. And then I start getting dripped with corporate credit cards and diamonds and sapphires and Movados, and I had arrived. You bet I'd arrived. I level up, man. I'm dating CEOs and presidents I'm working for. And, now I'm starting to go to New York, Hawaii, and San Francisco and whatnot, and I had arrived. I can tell you what this looks like. So, I date men of wealth, and he asked me, he says, do you want to go to we're going to go to the Bel Air Hotel for a date. I said, I don't have a dress of that caliber. He says, that's okay. We'll just fly up to San Francisco. We'll buy you a dress for date night, and we'll, get your dress. So we fly up to San Francisco. We go to Embarcadero Center. I pick out 2 Donna Karan dresses. I can't make a decision. He buys both. And then I get some Donna Karan sunglasses for accessories, and we fly back. Date night comes around, and I'm a nervous wreck. And I got my Donna Karan dress on. We go to the Bel Air Hotel. I order a drink because I'm nervous, because I don't belong here. If you know who I was, if you really knew who I was, I don't belong here. You could dress up my outsides, but my insides don't match your outsides, and I don't belong here. And he has no idea who I am. So I order a drink. Of course I do. I'd gun that one down. And then I still can't shake it off. I can't shake this nervousness off, so I order another drink. And that one ends up all over my Donna Karan dress and all over the white linen tablecloth, and I am mortified. Mortified. But I like to back this up a little bit. How many of us have drank before the date? Anybody? Thank you for your participation. How many of us have tried to control and enjoy our drinking while on the date? And how many of us have said, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom? Then you swing by that back bar and you throw a few shots back, or you make it into the stall and you pull the bottle out of your purse, take a few shots, and then you make yourself way back to the table. You go, I'll have a salad. And then you got to go leave that date and go drink like you need to drink. And nothing was different that night. I left the Bel Air Hotel and I ended up at the Pico Rivera Rim Ram room. You know the place, I bet you do, right? Because you laugh like you've been there, because I know. So that should just tell you enough, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more. It had Corkamira walls, patent leather seats, barf in the bathroom, and urine on the floor. And that is the way that I like to drink. It gets dark in there, and they talk about seeking lower companion. I become the lower companion. So I keep this going on, and I'm in a 5-star hotel room in Hawaii with him. And our book talks about we are without sufficient force to bring into the consciousness the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. And I can't shake it off. And I can't drink away this guilt, shame, and remorse I got going on. Because I'm sitting in a 5-star hotel room in Hawaii with him, laying up on that bed, and he's on the phone with his wife, giving her some lame excuse about where he's at. And I like to stand here and tell you I did that one time with one man, and 2 times with 2 men, and 3 times with 3 men. I had come into Alcoholics Anonymous with the wake of damage of broken families behind me. And I'm not proud of that. I'm a female alcoholic, and I'll do anything I need to get what I want. And when I would work with the sponsor later on, she would tell me that I'd robbed a wife of her husband, and I'd robbed the children of their dad, and I'd robbed their wallet because he was paying my way for a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things. But the toughest pill for me to swallow in this inventory process and forgiveness is I was the mere admission that I was doing the very same thing that my husband had done to me. And that took a really long time. Somehow, when I got back from that Hawaii trip, the guilt caught up to me, and I called it off. And from this point forward, my life becomes very, very colorful. And I start coming to at the top of Mount Baldy, not knowing how I got there or who I was with. And the only thing that I would do is I would come to and I would survey. Is there any surveyors in here? Like you'd come to and you'd survey. And the only thing that I'm doing is I am looking for the bottle, because I knew it would be the only thing that would dissolve the knot in my stomach called fear. And then I'm knocking on hotel room doors in Pomona. And it's not a good area. And I'm risking my life in the need of relief. And along this journey, a man named Jack showed up, and he took me out on a date, and I moved in on the 2nd. Anybody else? Right, thanks, Chelsea. I knew we were together for a reason. I moved in on the 2nd. He lives in Huntington Harbor. Why not? Right? So I move in, And he works nights and I work days, and now I'm drinking round the clock. And this is what it's looking like. I'm drinking peppermint schnapps on the way to work because I know it smells like toothpaste. I have alcohol stashed underneath the passenger seat of my car. I have alcohol stashed in my trunk. At work, I have alcohol in my right-hand side drawer of my desk. At lunchtime, I call up the Japanese bar teller, 2 words, Black Russian. She's got 2 lined up when I get them, and I gun those, or get there when and I gun those down. Then I run across the street to Circle K. I grab a Circle K cup and a vodka bottle, and that is my afternoon drink for the office. And then I have bar tabs, liquor store tabs, and restaurant tabs from work to home. In my house, I have alcohol stashed in my shoe boxes. I have it in my suit pockets. I have it underneath the kitchen sink, and I end up having it in my toilet tank because I need alcohol to survive. And when I get into the literature that says liquor ceased to be a luxury and became a necessity, they didn't have to explain it. I knew exactly what that meant. And later on, it talks about alcohol was my master. And it sure was. It was dictating my life. And during this relationship, has anybody ever come to in the middle of a field sobriety test? I came to telling the police officer that I could not perform this function because my equilibrium was off due to an inner ear infection. I went to jail that night. Has anybody ever come to in a city you didn't know existed? Which one? I don't know. Right. Mine was La Palma. Now, La Palma is like 1.82 square miles. The police pulled me over because I was an obstruction of traffic because I was going 8 miles an hour trying to get somewhere. And so now through these, I get DUIs and I get exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous. I get here from a nudge from the judge. And I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm listening to your stories of pain. And I'd be like, yeah, man, I drink too. And then you share your stories of joy. And I'd be like, absolutely great reason to drink. And I don't know you're sober. I don't know what's happening here. You see, I never even heard, I listened to the differences and not the similarities. And I don't even hear steps, sponsorship, God, unity, recovery, service, detox, sober living, rehab. I hear nothing but those stories. And then I thought you guys were just a group of people talking about your escapades. I had no idea what was going on. Just got my court card signed. I know now that when you share your stories of pain, it's divided amongst us. And when you share your stories of joy, it's multiplied by all of us. But I got to come all the way in and sit all the way down here. Come all the way in and sit all the way down and become a member here and not an attender. Become a member and not an attender. But that won't happen for 2 more years. So Jack hung in there as long as he could, and one night he called me up from work and he said, I'm not going to watch you kill yourself or anybody else. I'm leaving. And he left the house I moved into. And our book talks about we could blot out the consciousness of our intolerable situation the best I can or accept spiritual help. And I don't think I needed any help. And I got rent or booze. Huntington Harbor is really expensive on a single income, and I got rent or booze. I don't need any help. He's gone. I move. I go to Seal Beach. Seal Beach is an old town, a lot of money, and a lot of booze, and a lot of blackouts. I lived there for 2 years, and I can tell you 2 things. Hennessy's and Main Street. Somehow, I managed to hold on to a job. I do not know how. But on April 15th of 1994, I had blacked out one more night. My roommate and her boyfriend put me to bed. And I came to the next morning, and I'd had the DTs before, but I'd never had them this bad, and I was shaking violently, and I could not stand fully erect. I knew I had to get to work, and I crawled I tried to walk my way into the shower. I can't really walk, but I get into the shower, and when that water hit my body, it felt like I'd been hit by pellets and pins. And when I went to wash my hair hurt, and I knew what would fix it, and it would be another drink. I went down to the liquor store and I bought another bottle of Bacardi, and the rest of the story has been fed back to me by those involved. My employers broke into my house, they broke into my room, and they tapped me on the shoulder and they said, pack your bags, you're going somewhere. And I believe that God used them as a channel to get to me, and I believe that was a hand of God that touched me that day, because for a moment, I was instantly sober. And I had that moment of truth. I don't talk about that moment of clarity. I had that moment of truth. I had that moment of truth that hit my deep in my gut, behind my belly button, knowing it was all over. It was all over. I asked no questions. I had no fight. dutifully followed direction. I packed a duffel bag and I put my bottle of Bacardi in there. And they said, get in the car. And so, I start to head to the car, and again, I've got no fight, and I don't know what's happening, but I know something's happening. And they talk about there are no dues or fees here. Yeah, there are. I paid them out there. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I'm a female alcoholic, and I'll do anything I need to get what I want. I have just had a few moments to tell you some of the highlights of my drinking. I have not told you my lowlights. And our friend Sharon C. talks about, I slid it all across the bar for another drink. And I did. I had used my body, I used my dignity, I used my self-respect, my self-esteem, and I slid it all across the bar for another drink. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, you bet. The acronym for that is PAID. I paid a huge price. But the most demoralizing moment that was in full effect was being escorted into a detox by my employers. And so we get in there, and they're doing my intake. I don't know what's happening. Never had this experience. And they find my Bacardi bottle, and I am pissed off. And they said, do you have anybody you need to call? I'm like, no. And they said, well, do you have any parents? And I said, yeah, but they moved out of state like 32 years ago. And they said, well, you might want to give them a call. You're going to be here for a minute. And I'm like, no, I've got this. And they said, listen, you're going to be here for a while. Maybe somebody needs to know where you are. And I'm like, I'm trying to manage my life in detox, right? So finally I conceded. I called my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, are you sitting down? They said, yeah. And I said, I'm in a detox for alcohol. And they're like, oh my God, Dawn, where are you? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And they said, well, why don't you ask somebody? So I said, where am I? They said, you're at New Beginnings. I said, Mom, Dad, they tell me I'm at New Beginnings. And my mom said, well, where are you physically? We'll fly down, we'll assess the situation, see how we can help you. And I'm like, you just stay where you are. And they're like, by God, Dawn, you are our daughter. We need to know where you are. And later on, I would work, as we do our inventory and we start to do amends, and read the family afterwards. Like, I didn't know, my parents could only hear my demise on the phone, right? They would call me up, and we'd be on the phone for about 3 minutes, and my mom would say, hey, Dawn, have you been drinking? No, click. And then they couldn't find me for 3 days. And, that's undue stress and worry that I put on them, out of state. Like, they can't help their daughter. They don't know what's happening. They can't find me, whatnot. And now I'm telling them I don't know where I'm at. She says, we're going to fly down. I'm like, you just stay where you are. I'm like, ah. So finally I conceded. I said, where am I? They said, you're at New Beginnings at Clark and Candlewood and Lakewood. I said, Mom, Dad, they tell me I'm at New Beginnings at Clark and Candlewood and Lakewood. My mom said, at Clark and Candlewood and Lakewood? I said, that's what they said. My mom said, Donna, in 1964, you were born there. It was Lakewood General Hospital at the time. Wow. And that was another moment where God was getting my attention. I thought, man, if this place is called New Beginnings and I was biologically born here and now I'm brought back, it's called New Beginnings, maybe I can get a new beginning on life. Maybe I can get a new lease on life if I just stayed. So I stayed. 2 weeks later, the insurance kicked me out. And I will be forever grateful to Bill and Bob, who talked about attraction and not promotion. And there was a woman, and her name was Eileen. And Eileen ran this aftercare program, and I wasn't required to attend it, not by my insurance, not by my employers, no one. But you see, Eileen had she had this genuine, authentic smile. She radiated from the inside out. She was happy. You didn't have to ask her. You could feel it, and you could see it, because she vibrated. And I wanted what she had. So I sat next to her week after week after week, thinking I'd get it by transference. And I had no idea there was work involved. None. Ladies and gentlemen, I did that for 1 year. I went to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to that aftercare program, and I sat next to her, and I did nothing in the rooms of AA for 1 year. Nothing. I was physically sober. I was sober. But I hadn't quite recovered my mind. I laid the bottle down, but I hadn't quite recovered my mind. I was still suffering from a spiritual malady. Please don't get me wrong. The fellowship will support us, but the steps change us. The fellowship will cure the loneliness of alcoholism, but it will not produce the entire psychic change. The steps do that. On my 1 year anniversary, sober anniversary. I'm on the phone with another alcoholic, and I said, if this is what sobriety is all about, I don't want any part of it. I'm a miserable bitch. This sucks. And they said, why don't you get a sponsor? Why don't you work the steps? Why don't you go to some women's meetings? And why don't you get involved in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and your life will change. And on the phone on that night, my willingness was born, and I was all in. Admit one. You bet. You bet. Something needed to change. Restless, irritable, and discontent, unless I can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few steps. So I get that sponsor, and I start doing the work here. And I glommed onto some cassette tapes. And those tapes, I just dated myself. At least they weren't 8 tracks. But they were cassettes, and I glommed onto those, and I always, I'm grateful for the people that record, because they really help out in tough spots, right? I had a long trek from work to home, and two speakers broke down the steps in the manner in which I heard, which made the steps come alive, that really made the steps palatable. Like syrup on your pancakes, like I could drink them up. I could listen to this tape over and over and over again. One speaker broke down the steps like this: 1 is me, 2 is God, 3 is me and God, 4 and 5 is me, 6 and 7 is God, 8 and 9 is you, 10 is me, 11 is God, and 12 is you, and there's no one else to play with. And the other speaker said, 1 is I am the problem, 2 is come to believe there's a solution, 3 is a decision to seek that solution, 4 through 9 take care of the past, 10 takes care of our daily life, 11 takes care of our spiritual life, and 12 takes care of our AA way of life. Now, AA is the way I live. It is not something I do or attend. It is the way I live. Like, I could come up here and talk a good game. How am I living out there? Am I living a spiritually disciplined life? Am I practicing kindness, courtesy, justice, and love? How am I treating the elderly? How am I treating the 7-Eleven clerk? I'm a dog owner. Am I using the blue bag? My book tells me, it says, I'm in the world to play the role God assigns me. And I'm given roles all day long. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, an aunt, a friend, an employee, a sponsor, a sponsee, a volunteer, a citizen. Like, I'm given roles all day long. Am I given 110%? How am I living? How am I living? So I get active and involved in this work here, and I will tell you that I'm really grateful to the chapter called We Agnostics, because all through We Agnostics it says, cast aside an old idea, express something, lay aside a prejudice, express even a willingness, cast aside an old idea, welcome in something new, and I will tell you that for me, thank you. At 13 years old, I was raised in a religion I did not understand, nor did I believe in, and my parents at 13 said, opt in or opt out. I opted out. Now, I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have this idea of a great big God, but I told you about a little bit of how I was living out there, and I didn't feel worthy of love. And I come in here, and I watch you. And it says in here that I could have a limited conception. I could start there. And I start to watch you guys, and you guys are my hope in human form. And I start to watch your eyes start to twinkle and your skin start to glow, and I watch your character change. And I can't see, feel, or touch your God. And it says I can have a limited conception. So I pick the wind, because I can't see, feel, or touch the wind either. The only thing I could do is I could see the effects of the wind, whippling through the leaves of a tree. I could feel the effects of the wind on my face. And the wind is so powerful it can change a landscape. And the very same thing that I can't see, feel, or touch is changing you, within you. I'll pick that wind until I can establish my own relationship with a God of my understanding. My limited conception is there, right? And I would grow that. But I can tell you the very paragraph on the very page that changed my mind and changed my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's on page 55. And it says, deep down, in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. And later on it says, in the last analysis, the booze, the money, the men, all that human power couldn't relieve me of my alcoholism. But I had known that deep down within because I'd had it before. I'd had it on that parent's front porch. And that deep in my gut, behind my belly button, knowing, I knew it was there. And that was the paragraph that changed my life and changed my mind. And our third step prayer says, relieve me of the bondage of self. It never says, relieve me of the bondage of alcohol. And it reminds me that I am the problem. And I want to tell you what that looks like at 16 years sober. 2 months sober, I get a job as a file clerk for a temp service. That is the best I can do. File clerk, temp service. So that temp service puts me into this corporation, and AA taught me some valuable work ethics, like show up on time, do your job, give them an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, right? And so I'm just doing my filing, and they saw that, the company did, and they hired me up and out of that temp service and into this corporate job, in this corporate arena. And I started to work overtime. I started to ask questions of different departments. I put myself through school on my own dime, got a little degree, and I started to climb that corporate ladder, like I said and knew I would on my parents' front porch. And now, at 16 years sober, I am the senior manager of a global corporation, and I got power, prestige, and a pocketbook to back it. And I start treating my employees with rudeness and curtness, and I'm condescending, I'm demanding, and I'm insulting. And they took it for a while, and then they took me to HR, and I got written up. And I have never been written up in my entire working career. And I was dumbfounded and appalled and afraid that I was going to lose this job, and I was going to lose that paycheck, and I was going to lose this prestige. And that fear that our book talks about, that evil corroding thread in the fabric of our existence is shot through with it, you bet. That fear started to roll out into the women I sponsor, started to roll out into my friendships, rolled out into my family, and anybody who come in my vicinity, I would take them hostage. And it's about what they said, and this is what they did, and this is what they did today, and da-da-da. And eventually that fear rolled back into work, and I started treating my employees with rudeness and curtness, and I'm condescending, and I'm demanding, and I'm insulting. And through a series of events I don't have time to tell you about, I was fired in sobriety and on the floor in a fetal position with bubbles coming out of my mouth. And I had no idea what had happened. I didn't drink, but I had no idea what had happened. And I called my sponsor and I said, man, I feel like I've been cut off at the knees. I feel gut punched. I can't breathe. And she said, girl, you've been leveled to grow. She said, there's a bottom below the bottom you know. And I'm like, oh. And I will tell you that for me, what had happened was, I didn't know what happened then, but I know now. It was human power. And it had clicked over time, subtly back. Now, mind you, I am sponsoring women. I am going to meetings. I'm doing Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in the middle. But listen what happened. Like, I'd get all prayed up, and I'd go into the threshold of that job. First email, first phone call, it was power, I was power. And there was spiritual warfare going on inside that job. And I got unplugged. And now I knew what power was. And so I got taken to that big book, and that big book talks about, in page 63, it says, the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea of voicing it without reservation. I was asked to write my own third step prayer. And I did that in the middle of an Albertsons parking lot, and I was cracked wide open for a brand new experience. And I want to talk about 10, 11, and 12, and I know it says that I only got 5 minutes, but I will tell you that for me, 10, 11, and 12, Bill C. talks about, and I didn't, you know, I was like, when he said it, it was like, oh. He said, you know, he said that steps 1 through 9 are 10% of the program. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are 90% of the program. And when that happened to me, I truly invested in that. Is because for me, I feel, because it happened to me, is that step 10 was the least used and often overlooked step. Because I wasn't doing that. People would say, well, did you pray and meditate about your problem at work? Did you pray and meditate? Did you take it to prayer and meditation? Take what? I didn't do 10. Now, 10, and, my friend Adam talks about, 10 is power, or no, 10 is peace, 11 is power, and 12 is purpose, right? But there's also verbs in there. Continue, improve, and practice. That's what 10, 11, 12. Continue, improve, and practice. 10 says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. It says continue 4 times. Like, continue. To watch for selfishness. It says watch, ask, discuss, make, turn. I got all these things to do in 10. And it says, for me, my external behavior is the result of my internal condition. And 5 lines later, it says, we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. I want to tell you that I stand here before you, that you know, I was fired at 16 years sober, and 14 years later, this past September, I had an upheaval in my life. Huge. And I was thrown off. And I will tell you that I stand here embarrassed to tell you that I did not handle that very spiritually. And it talks about, you know, acceptance and cooperating with reality, and I'm fighting reality. And I am rigid, and I am unforgiving, and I'm angry, and I am a grudge holder, and I'm a grudge holder, and I will use it for ammunition, and da-da-da, and I'm not proud of that. But that's where 10 comes in. Watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when these crop up, not if, but when, and they're going to. Ask God to remove them. Discuss them with someone immediately. Make amends if we have harmed anyone immediately, and then turn our thoughts to someone we could help. And somebody said being embarrassed is another way to spell, you know, or is a bad form of spelling ego, right? I am. And one of the things is that, you know, I didn't drink. I wished I'd have handled it a little bit more spiritually, but the best I can do is to live spiritually today. Step 11, you know, and again, my external behavior is the result of my internal condition. And I'm like, what's the condition? You know, back in the, because in 64 and 71, it talks about being blocked. Like if I don't use that, if I don't use step 10, I am still blocked. And I need to use this step to keep the grace to flow. Improve means, you know, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact. Improve means make better, enhance that which was already there. What I came here looking for, I came looking with. All I've been asked to do is shine it up. Meditation is the medication for my malady. I have learned that this for me is, you know, I meditate first, then I pray, and then I meditate out. And through, you know, the years, I've had some, you know, different things, techniques or disciplines that I follow. And right now, I'm out with my hummingbirds in the morning, and I listen to them chirp and chatter and hear the wings flutter and all that. And I just meditate, and then I start prayer. Anyway. Step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. It doesn't say as the result of my attendance. I did that too. You see, I'm here because somebody else was doing God's work. They just delivered me. And now, what my job is I go into a meeting and I look for, you know, the pissed off face, the terrified one, or one that may be new to the meeting, and I walk up to them and say, are you new to the meeting? Do you know where the, you know, coffee is? Do you know where the water is? Do you know where the bathroom is? Do you need a hug? You know? Our book says we have recovered and been given the power to help others. My job really is to grab someone's hand and pull them out of the dark and put them on the path and be a light to guide the feet that are afraid. And then put their hand in the hand of God and leave it there and let them do that for someone else. Because we are all really here just to walk each other home. Just to walk each other home. And if you'll indulge me, I have maybe a minute. I know I've probably, time's up, right? But I will tell you that about 5 years sober, I realized that I never had any kids. My 30s were great. I got sober when I was 29 and a half years old. And then I've been able to travel the world. It has never been through business. It's always been through different opportunities, random weird things, you know, presented. And we've, you know, taken up those opportunities. And I've been over to China and France and South Africa and Honduras and Fiji and England and Ireland, all these places. And there's always been meetings at our destination. And sometimes the meetings haven't been in English, but they're always speaking the language of the heart. Like if you've gone to a non-speaking English-speaking meeting and you go in there, you still know. You still know, and you can breathe, and it just feels warm. But I will tell you this, and I will end with this, is we had the opportunity, we're on the Great Wall of China, we were the tour group, and they said, listen, if you get off the bus, you can go to the left, you can say you get on the Great Wall of China, you can say, it was very congested, you couldn't get very far, but you could say that you were on the Great Wall, or you can get off and you go to the right. It's a very difficult climb, it's an optical illusion. Listen, there's nobody on it, but listen, you take your pick and we'll see you at 3. And so what do we choose? Difficult climb. Of course we do. So we start climbing this Great Wall of China. Man, and I will tell you, it truly was an optical illusion. There's no quality control back then when they built the wall because it's this wide and this wide and that high, and it's all over the map. But anyway, we start climbing the wall. And it's truly an optical illusion. And about, you know, a little bit further up, I lost my breath. I'm like, oh my God, let's stop. Whew. Okay, let me catch my breath. Then we climb up a little bit further, and now I lose my strength. I'm like, man, I can't do this. And I asked Steve, I said, can you push me? Can you pull me? And he's like, I'll do what I can. So he pushes me up a little bit further and does what he can. And then eventually I get up a little bit further, but now I've lost my breath, I've lost my strength, and I said, I got to stop. I got to stop. And so I stopped for a minute, I caught my breath, and then I got some strength and got up a little bit further, and we got to the plateau. And on this plateau, the vision that I received was very similar to the postcard you may have received, is that the vision that I saw in person was the Great Wall wrapped around for miles with nobody on it. On that Great Wall, I dropped to my knees, and I said, dear God, in my entire life, I would never imagine I would ever be on the Great Wall. And this is what came back to me. This is your life in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes the steps take our breath away. And sometimes we got to ask for help. Can you help me with this 4-step? Can you help me with these 9-step amends suggestions? Can you give me some prayer and meditation techniques? Sometimes you just got to stop and ask for help. And sometimes you just got to stop and regroup, get the courage and the strength to move on. And on that wall, I realized I achieved a level of Eileen's peace, that lady way back in the aftercare program. Because each and every time I apply the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, they have always provided me a quiet mind and a skip in my step and joy in my heart and peace in my soul. And I hope and pray they do for you too. And then you go grab someone's hand and pull them out of the dark and put them on a path. And may we awaken and live. Thanks for letting me be here today. Sorry for going over.